what do you think about Areno making comments as you're playing the game?
Yawning during Guardia Quest I was like, yep, me too, buddy.
Welcome to New Game Plus. This is a retro gaming podcast where three guys spend 7 days playing one old game and then we talk about it. My name's Dustin.
My name is Kenny.
I'm Nolan.
And this is episode 386, and it is a Patreon poll! Question of the week, sent in by me. Which video game franchise has the best music? Simple.
Ooh.
I just want to know which franchise has the best music overall.
I was gonna say Zelda that's my
Of course.
of course, and so I won't though because you're gonna, it's
You just said it.
Okay, it's Zelda. It's Zelda. You know why?
Why?
Because ever since the beginning they've been reusing the same themes, but
Yeah,
each
cool.
time they iterate on them and make them on theme for the game's theme. So like in Twilight Princess, it's kind of a darker, creepier, spookier thing, and so they added that twist to them all, and they do it flawlessly, and each one is so good.
Koji is not the only one to have done something like that, because that is also true for Final Fantasy series. They have been using the same themes for decades now and just been updating them, tweaking them, which means that they got it right the first time and then they just continued to get it righter over the years.
Yeah.
And arguably that may be the right answer because just Final Fantasy.
But
because both quality and depth and time and like feels. But I figured you were gonna say that, so I came with two other answers. The one answer is Assassin's Creed. You say
good music.
Nolan's making faces, but
Disgusted.
you
What
name
is
me
that?
another video game that's won a Grammy award.
You looked this
Assassin's
up.
Creed has won a Grammy?
Who cares? F the
No
Grammy.
one. It's fun trivia. That they only started doing that last year, and the Assassin's Creed game that came out is the one. that won.
What?
Real answer though, because I didn't want to just drop trivia on you. Halo.
Ooh.
Just
Halo's
classic.
a good answer.
And they're all good. Yeah.
There's some
iconic.
good ones. I also thought of, and people don't often think of this one, but the new Doom games has some of the coolest,
Great.
like heavy rock metal, like
Yeah.
driving guitars, and it really works for the game, and it's very dynamic.
Yeah.
So that's a good option too.
It makes you want to play it more because of the soundtrack.
I think all of those are good answers. We didn't offer a bad answer. There are plenty of bad answers, though. And so if
Assassin's
you want to
Creed.
give us a bad answer or an answer that is better than Assassin's Creed, then you can hop in our Discord. We've got in our latest episode discussion channel, we've got a whole question of the week thread now. So come and let us know.
And if you send it, like in that channel, if you tell us what your answer is, you might win a Grammy. We'll give you one.
We've been giving them out lately.
Yeah, I promise.
We've been, and Kenny will even sign it. But
Yeah.
we already offered Zelda and Final Fantasy and AC and Doom, and it's going to be difficult to find a better OST. It's going to actually be what, Kenny?
Hello. You forgot my
Oh.
answer.
Halo. Yeah. It would be challenging to give us a better answer. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah. Like in our retro game of the week, retro game challenge.
Overview.
Retro Game Challenge is a Nintendo DS title.
You asking me?
Surprisingly. No, I'm informing you. That just is kind of shocking to me.
Yeah.
It was developed by Indie Zero and published here in the States, at least, by Xseed Games. This came out in 2007. And so don't shake your head. It came out 2007-ish, which puts it right on the threshold of old enough for us to even be talking about it, and is exactly what it sounds like. This is a compilation game where you're taking on retro gaming challenges. So this is the first retro game we've played that's about retro games, and it's ridiculous that that's the case. And even more ridiculous is the plot here, because your character has been, I don't know, sucked into a gaming universe by a demon by the name of Areno that looks like a weird mashup of the Matrix and a bad clown, and challenges you to get out by beating and completing challenges he gives you based on old classic retro games from his childhood. And so you got to deal with that.
Do you want to know something about Indie Zero?
There's information about them?
Uh-huh. They developed
Sure, drop it on me.
Theater Rhythm, that game you like, Dustin, and also a Kingdom Hearts rhythm game. Which I didn't know existed, actually.
I'm assuming this is definitely correct, that it's a Japanese company.
I would
because
yes, I would say.
And the reason why I say that is because this game was not exclusive to Japan, but I know that the other games in this series were exclusive to Japan, that this IP was developed from a game show in Japan, exclusively in Japan.
Yeah, this was a TV show there.
Yeah, a TV show where the game master was a comedian whose name is
Areno.
So he is the character, and he actually took part in the development of this game, by some of his suggestions and thoughts and things like that. So
and we already know Japanese game shows are weird. Can be. And we already know that, like, I don't know, takes where you are digitizing something that exists in another format can be weird. And then you just make your host a demon and then let it be weird.
Well,
and have it be a DS game, but without much need for touch at all. And it's weird.
I think the game show is still running. It's called Game Center CX. I think
After
it's
all these
still
years?
on the air. I saw one of the recent episodes aired in 2023. So it's been going
That's
since
impressive.
like 06 or 03 or something crazy like that.
I didn't own a DS growing up. I have been able to play on one since. I think my brother owned a DS. I feel like, though, this is DS kind of like, I feel like DS was very experimental, and there were some quirky games on the DS. It kind of is with a lot of Nintendo consoles, I feel like, but with the DS in particular. And so it feels like it works for the Nintendo
This
DS.
is 2000s DS core, 100%. It's like
disagree.
You can't because you didn't have one. But I missed this one back in the day because I thought it was one of those phoned in bloatware DS games. We've talked about the catalog being just riddled with like a bunch of filler titles because the cover isn't all that interesting. That's why I thought that.
The cover sucks.
The cover sucks. I think it's basically the game show logo maybe that they just put in space, and
in space
you'd miss it
nothing
on a shelf. You'd miss it. But
yeah.
No,
it is bad.
I do think it's a very DS kind of game.
I don't know that you can say a game is a very DS kind of game and not have at least some touch element.
That's the whole point. Kenny. You can.
I understand that that argument. It's bad, but I'm talking about like the quirk nature of this game. The other DS games that we played on the show are what?
Oh goodness!
There hasn't been many.
Heart Surgeon.
Oh, Trauma Center, Under the Knife.
Yeah,
which is quirky and weird, right?
Yes, okay. Very.
We have played
Dragon Ball Fighter Z.
No, Dragon Ball Z Super Sonic Warriors 2.
Is Z the new one? Like on PS5?
Yeah, Fighter Z is the good one, though.
Okay.
And then we played Professor Layton in the Curious Village,
Absolutely.
which is phenomenal.
Peak.
But all of those, let's not talk about the DBZ one, but the two, Trauma Center and Professor Layton, quirk, unique.
Sure.
So like that's why when I'm playing this one, I'm like, okay, I'm fine with the quirk, with the uniqueness, with the differences of it as we step.
It was the era. Yeah.
It's I mean, Nintendo's weird sometimes, and that's part of their charm, and they are weird here too.
Gameplay.
So I expected going into this game a series of mini games. I was thinking almost
Good, that's what you got.
I mean, kind of, but I was thinking party style game.
You were thinking WarioWare.
More exactly. I was thinking WarioWare, where it was drop in, maybe challenge, but like multiplayer challenges or challenges, but like you randomly pick them, almost American Gladiator style, to give a bad reference, but that's recent on our show or something. This was not that. It's a little more linear and kind of story driven, and you're playing one game at a time that are retro games. You do a number of challenges to kind of beat that game, and then that game is unlocked for you to go back and sort of free play as you want. But the kind of process of getting through the story of the game is one game at a time, work through a series of challenges that have been given to you and beat them with the help of your game manual and some sweet tips on how to cheat in the game magazine that's also sitting on your weird friend's shelf.
And he just went through the entire game.
Yeah, so do you give your vote for New Game Plus status?
We can talk about each of those elements.
Let's break down the games first, because it's not just real retro games. These are games
custom.
The developers.
Let Nolan talk.
The Indie Zero developers had to develop games that were their games and they owned them, but were based very heavily on real ones. Galaga being the first ripoff, if you want to call it a ripoff, that inspired the first game, Cosmic Gate, that you play. But like, you have to also avoid copyright and stuff. Like, you have to get really close without actually making the game, and I thought that was crazy.
I definitely don't want to use the word ripoff because
I don't either.
or the words. I don't really know how hyphens work, but because they are nods to, they are certain, it's very intentionally, and it's doing it with honor, because the whole game is about playing old games. We simply can't do that in one game, and so they are thank you, and so they are nodding to these games of the past, particularly the 80s. So you were walking through various eras of gaming. Really, you're just in one era. You're in the 80s, and you're playing primarily these Famicom copies. Yeah. And so you've got 8 games, kind of. I think you've got a lot less than that, just different versions of the same game on some of these. But the first one you mentioned, Nolan, is Cosmic Gate, and that is copying Galaga. Then you've got Robot Ninja Haggleman, which I don't think most American or EU audiences would have the correlation there, because the game that it is copying most is a game from Japan.
Ninja Jajamuru-kun.
Yeah, that's what it is. And that there's 3 versions of that game. The first and second are like that, but the third is kind of a lot more like Ninja Gaiden.
Yes, it's very much like Ninja Gaiden.
Then you've got Rally King, and just a varied version of that, Rally King SP, and that is just kind of like a top-down driving racing game, and kind of like Road Fighter. There's a few of those that maybe came over here.
Zippy Race.
Then you've got Star Prince, which is a close comparison to Star Soldier, a space shooter.
Yeah.
And then Guardia Quest. Is that how you pronounce it? Guardia Quest?
Is there I thought it was Guardia. Maybe I was like misreading.
I don't think there's an R in there.
Is there not?
I don't think so. And that is a copy of Dragon Quest, Kenny.
Kenny, were you happy about that one?
Ooh.
I didn't get to that one.
That's
farther.
One of the later ones.
Well, okay. Sure. So then I guess that
I know it was
you did your research, right, Kenny?
Well, I mean, I always do research, but I didn't get to that game.
That kind of speaks to the linear point that you made earlier, and also was something that I went into this with the expectation that it would be more like WarioWare, where they're micro games, or just a little less fleshed out than these. But I'm okay with them being fully fleshed out little games, because honestly, they're really well made. Like, the imitation factor is clear when you first open it, but the more you play, the more you see the quality and thought that went into each one. Like, they cared that the games were fun. But with that, sometimes you will find yourself playing the same game for a long period of time, maybe longer than you want, especially if you don't like the game. Haggleman 1, for me, I felt like that was kind of a boring segment for me, but then you get to Rally King, which was okay. But Guardia Quest is so long. It is a slog.
It's a JRPG.
It is a full-on RPG in the middle of the game that makes you like break forever, and that's my least favorite one because of how slow it was. I didn't like getting locked into some of the games.
Pace is hard here. Yes, both having to play one game at a time and like having things that are bite-sized, but then having a different genre of games. I feel like it was a mistake to put an RPG style game in here at all. They should have stuck to stuff that was quick bites. Like, the other stuff works so well for that. A shoot 'em up, like, of course, stick that in there. That makes so much sense. So I'm with you. It's kind of awesome, awkward choices there, I think.
I honestly think your enjoyment of this game is going to come down to pace because, like you mentioned, Nolan, the emulations of these games are great. I think like, it really feels like you're playing some of these older games, down to even the screen lag if there's too many bullets on the screen. I think that's actually a part of the game that they
coded that for sure.
It's like artificially put in there, but like to be a real thing that happens. And not even just like screen lag, but also things like translation issues and like funny spellings of words that are 100% intentional, and you could tell they were intentional, so it was sort of self-aware. It was funny.
And but also they are standalone games. I think almost every single one of these games, I mean, really any single one of these games, every single one of these games could be a standalone Famicom game.
Yes.
Now, they're nodding to those, and so we'll talk about it later in age, but I think some of them are from about 10 years later in the way that it looks and feels and plays, probably.
The Star Soldier
one, still nodding
especially,
to that. Oh, right. But it's like, hey, I've played some of those NES titles, and it does not look like this.
No, y'all reaching.
But they're all games that are standalone, and they're not brief. Like, there's enough content there for it to be a fully fleshed out game, maybe except for Guardia Quest, because JRPGs from that era in particular are much longer. This is only 2 dungeons, I think, in that JRPG. And here's the thing. I think some people this week thought, hey, there's something for everybody. There's this for Nolan, this for Kenny, and there's a JRPG maybe for Kenny and Dustin, because I know Kenny did a lot of Dragon's Quest, so we don't talk about that enough. But
he did.
Because it's certainly more that than Final Fantasy, and like, they don't give you descriptions of items. They've got all but here you've only got 2 dungeons rather than the myriad of dungeons and gameplay, which is good. They needed to shorten it, but I do totally agree that pacing, not just with that JRPG, but with the way that the game is set up in the first place, that you've got to play the same game over and over again, completing various challenges in that game to unlock the next game. There's got to be a better option.
Here's the option, and I thought about it immediately, because I thought when I got to my second challenge, even after the first Cosmic Gate challenge, I thought the next one would be a different game. And so if you had like rotation style where each challenge was a different game, then the pacing would be better, and you unlock the games for free play after you've done 3 to 4 challenges per game completed. Boom, you unlock free play for that game.
Yeah. Or even different levels of the same game, but something that feels different. But you just do the same thing again. And in some cases, the challenges are different enough that it makes you sort of experience the game a little bit differently. But to some degree, it's not. It's just an artificial ending point, and you're just going to play the game 3 or 4 times in a row until you accomplish whatever it is that you're supposed to be accomplishing.
I'm landing somewhere in the middle. I think there is a solution, but I would submit this. I think that after beating the first challenge in a game, it unlocks the next game in the list. So you just have to beat the first challenge, but then you still have 2 or 3 other challenges that you need to come back to in order to maybe unlock the final game or to beat
that
that
alone.
to come back.
Yeah.
Would have helped so much.
Yeah.
Just allowing you to do them in any order.
Yeah, it gives quick variety so that you can keep moving on if you want.
Yeah,
if you really enjoyed a game, you can stay there and play if you want to.
Right.
And maybe they were locked because of the way that they were releasing the
by year
the magazines.
Yeah, right.
And so, and I think for all of us and our community, I know is the case as well. The linearity of this game is what surprised me this week. I don't know what I was expecting. If you were expecting kind of more WarioWare.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was expecting, but a linear storytelling plot, progressing narrative in between these things was
a childhood couch co-op gaming emulator. Is not what you were expecting. Linear.
Sure. Yeah.
Couch. Can we just address that, because the top screen of the DS is the game that you're playing.
Yeah.
Right.
The bottom screen is the living room with the TV and the 2 boys, you and Areno, playing the game.
Yeah, and I absolutely love it. And that's why I'll defend against Kenny's point about the game not having touch. I understand that in gameplay you're expecting a fully integrated touch mechanic on these games on the console, because sure, that's the whole gimmick of that console. But you have to understand the DS had a full catalog, and there was a big chunk of it that said, cool, touch is here, maybe we'll let you select characters when you're naming yourself, but our game is happening on the top screen. And that happened more often than you would think, Kenny, with a touchscreen console. So I wasn't surprised by this. Maybe there was a way to integrate that, but I absolutely love the bottom screen staying the living room experience, because that was Areno's whole point with the game, was I want people to know what it was like back then. And I think it accomplishes that feel very well because of that split screen nature.
What do you think about Areno making comments as you're playing the game?
Yawning during Guardia Quest I was like, yep, me too, buddy.
But he would cheer for you if you do well or find a power up. He would panic if you're doing something bad.
Which would have been funny if he sounded like a child.
Sounds like a man.
He didn't. He sounds like an old man, and it's coming from this child's body, and it was creepy.
A memory was unlocked this week that I don't know if I've shared with y'all. So this
lore
is
incoming.
NGP lore unlocked.
Grab your popcorn.
So I have a younger brother, 4.5 years younger than me, and but you know me that I liked to play JRPGs growing up, particularly Final Fantasies, and so he would be in there. It's not a 2-player experience, and he wasn't young enough for me to hand him a controller and say, "You're playing too." So what I would do when I faced serious bosses in Final Fantasy is that I would convince my brother to curl up on the couch beside me and to start praying to God that I would beat this boss. And so I wanted him to close his eyes because I needed to focus, and I didn't want him to see if I messed up also. And he would be there interceding on my behalf to beat this boss. And I know that God was listening, because
you won.
I would beat that boss.
Because you won every video game that you ever played.
That is perhaps one of the most core memories I've ever heard, and it wasn't even mine.
So funny.
Is that
Praying for my older brother.
Funniest thing.
To beat Bahamut.
Yeah, but that unlocked this week when I was watching my character and Areno there, because Areno's not playing the game, you're playing the game. He's just watching you and cheering
he's just
you on.
Commenting.
Maybe praying. We don't know.
That is so funny, dude. Oh my goodness. Finally, we should talk about the magazines that play a part in the gameplay, actually. I was really impressed how they implemented this, because again, they wanted you to feel like what it was like back then to play games. And the whole feeling of, well, and this speaks to the linearity. I'm going to defend it a little bit. Back then, you had the game that you had, And so, yeah, that was the one you were playing over and over. And so what did you do? You would get those magazines and find out tricks, like how the mechanics work. So it would, like, they didn't teach you anything. You had to go find it in the book in this game. You had to go, like, learn the mechanics and then cheat codes. Brilliant way to implement that. I think that's so charming.
And not only that, I do want to talk about the magazine, but the manuals. Each game had a manual, which we talked about on the show before, but that was a core part of gaming.
That was the best part.
Back in the day.
Oh,
even
huge.
when we play retro games now, I'll often pull up the manual, the PDF print
same.
of the manual, because that's where you learned how to play the game. They didn't always have tutorials in the game like they do nowadays.
Absolutely.
They had it. That's the manual.
Yep.
And I remember renting or buying games and reading the manual on the way home.
Yeah, in the back
I
seat.
remember getting strategy guides and looking through them before playing the game. And it's funny because I think Areno even like comments about like it's kind of cheating to look at these magazines or something like that. But in this game, it was just so much fun. And I don't know if it's going to work for everybody, but it was so much fun for me even to go through every page of the manual. And these are not just like there's 16 pages of the manual for you to flip through.
Yeah, but like
in the
animations,
magazine,
pictures, everything is awesome.
in the magazine, there's dozens of pages to get through that's talking about the game that you just got unlocked, but also a future game that is coming around the pike. And then you've got like cheat codes and instructions on how to find this shortcut in Rally King.
Yeah,
I loved that component
it's
of
effective.
it. I don't know if it would work for everybody, but it worked for all of us.
It definitely worked for me. Yeah.
Kenny?
I got the concept, and I appreciated sort of the atmosphere they were trying to build. I appreciated some of the information and things to help you play the games more effectively. You really did need it in some cases. They were kind. There's like cheat codes to keep playing if you get to the end of a level and die, and things that like if you were bad at a game, you might have had a hard time beating one of these challenges without. And so they really did do a good job of making it a sort of core part of this game's experience.
But
So I like how integrated it was. I don't love the whole meta experience of like play the game that is being kids playing an old game. It felt a little forced to me, and this feels coupled to that. But how they did it was pretty good.
I found a cheat code for Rally King that not only makes your car invincible, which is nice, but it also removes all the other cars from the track, which makes that game super easy.
Nice.
Because you're now racing against no one and your car is impervious to damage. So I thought it was cool. I loved learning. I looked at every magazine that came in. Same. And I like even had some humor to it because like at the back they had not the director of the magazine, but whatever. And it was like a revolving door. Someone was there for 1 week.
Editor.
The editor in chief. And like just to call back to like all of that, man. I didn't get Nintendo Power. I wish I
didn't
did.
either. It was a bit too expensive, I think, for me.
But my parents weren't going to do a subscription for me. But I know that anytime I was at a bookstore or at like some place that had them, I was always looking through them.
Scrolling through them.
Just a lot of fun. Okay, I do want to know, before we conclude the gameplay section, out of the games that you played, out of the games that you experimented with, which one was your favorite one and why?
Oh, my favorite one was Star Prince, which was the Star Soldier.
Oh, you like a space shooter finally.
I like a space shooter. I love Star Soldier. You know this about me.
First shmup we've played that isn't garbage.
It was based on a game, yeah. And then followed by Haggleman 3. Which was the Ninja Gaiden one. Fantastic.
Ninja Gaiden. Yeah. Kenny?
Star Prince was my favorite as well. Yeah.
Me too.
Wow. It was so
the
good.
best of the ones we were given.
First of all, I love space shooters, and y'all know that, and I'm good at space shooters, and everyone in the world knows that. But I don't know. If that was on the Famicom,
bro,
I would have loved it even more. But yeah, just being able to get the power-ups, fight the bosses, it just felt good.
It controlled really nicely. It was a good game.
Honestly, it's better than some of the space shooters that it's emulating, right?
It's true.
Aged.
Sold abysmally in the U.S.
100,000 copies or less?
Well, that's bad. That's really
Yeah.
bad, and that made me sad because, like, I kind of get it. It's based on a Japanese TV show that no one over here knows, so that falls flat, and that's kind of the main shtick. And again, with that cover art,
yeah,
but
and the cover art. That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Like, nobody's picking this up and getting excited about it.
But I would have hoped that people still would have like grabbed it, and probably here and there they did, because it's so intriguing when you actually find out what the game is. I just think it relies so heavily on that game show to sell, and it did in Japan. It had a sequel, so like, I don't know.
Well, and I don't think just that. I think this is very generally speaking, but I feel like Japanese gamers are so much more open to quirk and uniqueness and experimentation
Because they like to
and
have fun, dude, and we are rocks
we
over
don't.
here, man. We don't like anything.
But over here, and I think more so now, but back then, certainly not. Like you needed a game that fell in one of these three categories, basically. And if it didn't, we're not going to play it. And so I think maybe it was just early for, I don't know, because it is different. So the people that even bought it, I think that not everyone was going to be attached to it, particularly those people that don't have any desire to either go back to their childhood or experience someone else's
That's
childhood.
big. And I'm torn on that because on one hand, I can see like a kid at the time or even now and later, like picking up this game and being introduced to like retro gaming, because some people have zero context. We do, because we at least got the tail end of a lot of these, or it was full on our childhood. Then so many people don't even think about this, right? Because they're much older. So I can see it being a gateway to like enjoyment of that kind of game. But on the other hand, I can see it being like a complete turnoff to a gamer now of like, what is this? Like, this is not fun to me. Why am I having to look in a magazine to play the freaking game? Like, I can see the other hand too. It's rough.
Yeah, it felt like it was trying to be two things at once. Like an introduction and a like tutorial and hey, you get to experience this for people who didn't, and like a nostalgia call out for those who did at the same time. But because of that, it couldn't decide which one it wanted to be, and so it was just sort of a kind of vague experience that I don't think worked well for either of those things.
Funnily enough,
Sure.
thank you. The retro game graphics age the best for me. It's the DS graphics that bother me.
Oh, I love DS graphics.
sure.
Don't do this.
The top screen always looked so good. The
Don't.
bottom screen didn't.
Don't. Which aspect?
Oh,
the
it's
character
true.
models?
Yeah, the character models were garbage, and Areno's big demon face in front of the coat, like, that did not look good.
Man, I knew y'all were
You
going.
just like that era.
It's got
and
a
that
font.
console of
It's got a
It
big
does.
font, and the text, like the text, always looks that way, where it's very jagged.
Yeah,
There's a good word for it.
jagged. The text reminds me of when games are fan translated over here, and they just use. Yes, it does not look good.
Come on.
But the top screen, those graphics. I'm glad they did this, because if they would have went true Famicom or true retro, it may have not been as pretty. But all of those games, from Cosmic Gate, which is your earliest game, to what Haggleman 3, I think, was the most recent in time. Haggleman, the first one, doesn't really look good, but I think it's what it's going for. But all the rest look really, really good. Guadia Quest, man, if JRPGs looked like that, it was just really, really, really good.
Yeah. It kind of felt like a remaster. Like those games were remastered.
Like a pixel remaster or something.
Exactly.
Of all these games.
Did you think the music held up to that?
That also, they took a few years in the future and gave us that music.
Yeah, they did.
They were good though.
The RPG.
Even my wife. The RPG one was good, but the one that we like, the Star Prince, that intro
one was
music,
banging.
So good. I listened to the playlist, the OST this week, because there's some really good tracks on there for these games.
And they did a great job of making the soundtracks fit the games they were with.
Yeah.
You know, they all felt distinct from each other, very different one to another, but each one gave you that sort of atmosphere of the game that you're going for, and that's big. Like, that's what you really have to do with music. And so I'm glad it wasn't one sort of old retro style, you know, like soundtrack that they played for the whole thing.
Yeah.
They could have done that. That would have been a mistake. They made a good choice here in giving each one a music identity.
And each one being different makes this a really interesting OST. You said you listened to it, Dustin. I did too. After hearing the Star Soldier track, I was like, let me just go see what the whole thing is as a package. And as a package, the OST is so fascinating because it jumps around, but I kind of like it. It's just, I don't know. I think it caters to the games that are in the collection really well, and they didn't phone this stuff in. They developed these fully cohesive games that fit together, yes, but on their own could stand, music included.
I think this is guess. I think Kenny thinks they should have gone more traditional graphically and sonically. Like, do you think that they?
I think it was good choices on both fronts.
Good.
Yeah,
good. I do too. I think they aged up instead of grabbing straight from the 80s with the sound and graphic font. They aged it 5-10 years or something like that, while still making it feel. I think it's a balance, and I think they struck that balance for the most part.
Agreed.
I do too. I think they did a pretty good job. They felt like playing old games, but polished and playable, and they looked like you were playing old game, but refined and bearable.
Kenny, there is a question you brought up in the age section last week. Nolan and I thought it was a good question. We asked if you would remember it in the future episodes. So I'm reminding you now to remember it so that you can ask for this game.
It's a great question, and that is, not only is this a game that we would play today, but is this a game that we would play again? Like, does it have its own legs? Is there some replayability to it outside of just like time?
I think first of all, it's kind of a lengthy game. I think to clear everything, including Guardia Quest, which slows down the pacing. I think Guardia Quest is a 5-hour experience.
It's ridiculous. It doesn't fit.
I think that after you beat it once, I think there's plenty of reason to come back to it to beat it. But I think after you beat it, other than coming back for the free play, because I do think there might be something there. If you enjoy the games on their own, there's not much reason to come back through and play the game in its entirety again.
Free play,
but it's nice that they give you that.
Yeah,
free play is nice.
Free play is fully a reason why, as a kid, if I had this, I would have come back to this time and time again.
Sure.
I absolutely love games like this that give you the free play option. WarioWare, yes, being the king of this. I played that game constantly just because I enjoyed the little tiny bits of little sessions of these games. I could see myself playing specifically Star Prince a lot, even though it's the same game. There's replayability for this for me 100%.
There are 2 sequels, a second and a third, actually. They were both released exclusively in Japan.
Yeah.
And the second one does have a fan translation in English. So
I might hit that up.
It is playable today. And it's fun because they continue to go a little bit. So it's late 80s, early 90s that they get to in that one.
I might hit that up.
That makes me a little more excited about it, but I'm probably less excited than Nolan is.
If you want a copy of this game for your DS, it's going to be $50 used, loose. But if you want it new, it's going to be $142.
Respectable.
Okay, I actually expected higher just because the sales were so poor.
Right.
I was thinking there may not be many of them out there.
Yeah, that publisher was like, nah, we're good. And it was probably a good business decision, honestly. It's sad, but why would you do that
because
again?
if they were... Yeah, if you bring it over again, the thing, they were excited at first because the sales, from what I read, were great at first, but then it fell quickly. Yeah. And so I think they made the right decision not to bring over the games in the future. It's sad, though.
Final thoughts.
At the end of each and every one of our episodes, we determine whether or not the game gets our vote for New Game Plus status, which is our general thumbs up or thumbs down. It does require 2/3 of the vote to swing one way or the other. Kenny, what'd you think of Retro Game Challenge?
Yeah, it was fine. I got to do this for real. Here's the thing. The games themselves are okay. There are definite pacing issues, though. We talked about it. Like being forced to play each game all the way through on repeat numerous times. Big mistake. Love some of the stuff they did with the kind of character and world building, but also those kids were kind of obnoxious and like it wasn't didn't even sound like a kid. Like the man voice interrupting me in the middle of the game was awful. This one didn't work for me for like a number of reasons. And it's not because I think the game itself is bad. I think they crafted this like carefully. Like often I'll say like this game was made with love and it shows, but this game was made with love and it shows, but I still don't want anything to do with it. And so no New Game Plus for me. It tried, but it just bounced off. I couldn't.
Is that the first no New Game Plus of the pool party? Of the summer? Like total?
Yeah.
It
It might be.
That is interesting.
Wow, you're wrong. All right, Dustin.
I loved this game. I do think it's imperfect. I think particularly with the pacing. We talked about that. That is the big issue. But I enjoyed going through every game this week. Haggleman 1, the first one, was my least favorite. But after I figured it out, it was very confusing at first just because I haven't played its counterpart. And I played all the other counterparts or games like them. But once I figured it out, it was fine. It was enjoyable. I also don't necessarily like the two boys interacting in the story. It felt really slow. Every time I chose an option to watch one of the characters have to crawl over to the cabinet to grab the magazine was so annoying. Anytime that massive face came to talk to me was super annoying. I just wanted to get back to playing the game. But all 8 of those games are so crafted with love and intention. I'm saying the same thing you are right now, Kenny. They were crafted with love and intention, and I felt that, and I enjoyed that. And then I also enjoyed the boring part, the reading the manuals, the looking through the magazines. And it not only elicited these old feelings of nostalgia for me, of things that I did, but it also was enjoyable just in its own right and its own merit. It's a unique enough game that I certainly think everybody should try it. I don't think everybody's going to enjoy it like I did. I think some might bounce off for various reasons, but it's still an experience that should be experienced.
Interesting take. I think me and 100,000 other people who didn't tell their friends about this game are just in the majority here, but I don't know because I feel like you guys aren't. I'm curious what our community has to say, but Nolan has to tie break for us first.
A retro gaming podcast talking about a retro game about retro games.
It's meta.
This is a goofy little DS game. And I definitely missed it at the time because that cover's trash, and I care about stuff like that. But once I played it and understood the premise, I love the premise. Sitting in a room playing old games, and it stays that way the whole time. I love the bottom screen being reserved for crawling around the room and getting the magazines. All that worked for me. The linearity is my biggest complaint because I would have liked to change up the pace. I don't like playing Haggleman back to back to back, Haggleman 1, and I definitely hated the RPG one. They play the nostalgia angle hard, and I think it lands quite well. And the slow parts, for me, were not enough to deter me from advancing the game and unlocking more. I beat the game this week because I really enjoyed, I just enjoyed playing it, so I got through the slogs. And honestly, it's sort of added to the realistic aspect of waiting on a new game to come out. I had already mentioned that, but I had a ton of fun with this, and I definitely give it New Game Plus. I think it's a really fun DS title.
Hey, there we go. It's not perfectly New Game Plus, but Retro Game Challenge still is New Game Plus certified. But what did you think on YouTube? Our poll said 18% yes, go play this game. 4% said no, they agreed with Kenny. But
Wow.
obviously, 78%
Small
have never played this game
That's
before.
a lot of people that have no idea what the heck we're talking
Keep
about.
it that way.
Well, the title's
We
also just
had
descriptive. Retro Game Challenge.
Many from our they needed a new name too, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a few problems with promotion. A lot from our community played along with us this week. Wrote in, Turtle said, when I first saw this game, I thought the game case looked really bland, and the name made it sound like an NES remix style game with more old school classics. This couldn't be more wrong from the moment the digitized conscious of the game master sends you back in time to play old games. I was hooked. The games themselves can be kind of hit or miss, but generally the games get better over time, with the Haggleman trilogy and Star Prince as the standouts. I think the games should have been unlocked in batches of 2 or 3 at a time, allowing you to flip-flop more between the objectives you want to do at the moment. This game gives a very different type of gaming experience than you can get from almost any other game, and in my opinion, while not perfect, it does it admirably. In my mind, this game is undoubtedly deserving of NGP status.
It does have that Namco Museum style feel to it. They mentioned the
Very
NES
much so,
remix. Yeah, but that can work.
What Turtle's point of it being a game that you can't experience in any other game,
Yeah,
I think is so true. While it's also like, but Galaga is this game, and it can be experienced in 8 other games, right? But like it can't be experienced in any one other game, and I think that's unique.
Yeah, agreed.
Garlisle said, on the gameplay front, RGC's individual games are usually better than what they're calling back to. With sharper controls and more innovation, they're the ideal of the era more than the reality. Usually, anyways. Guardia Quest is half the things I hate about old school Dragon Quest. None of them are super amazing, though, by themselves or in a collection. It's the greater experience framing that is the real selling point here, aiming to recapture the actual context of retro gaming with magazines, manuals, cheats, schoolyard rumors, and such. Most of it succeeds, though I feel like it's also missing potential here. The challenges could sometimes feel like repeats, and the scenario around the games could have been something. And it just wasn't. It left the game feeling anticlimactic. Overall, I did enjoy it enough to finish it, but I don't know if I'll ever return to any of it.
Sounds like you, Kenny. Like they went all in on the nostalgia experience and it didn't land fully.
Yeah, I think you might have been a little bit more on board than I was overall since you got all the way through it.
Beat the game,
I couldn't.
right?
Oh, sure.
But still, yeah.
So we received 2 commentaries from 2 of the people that submit, actually all 3 actually. Clint, Not Enough Dog, and Tim of the T submitted this game to the Patreon poll.
Great.
And so let me read through theirs real quick. Tim of the T actually just did a very short commentary. Didn't get a chance to, but I still want to read it because they submitted it. Didn't get a chance to play a bunch this week, but I will say what I said in another channel. This game is so weird, it's like a fever dream.
It kind of is.
Sure.
With the talking head, yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Clint said the DS was perhaps my most frequently played system ever. I brought it everywhere with me in high school, and I loaded up a flash cart with every obscure game I could find, including RGC. This one isn't even close to being a must-play, and certainly isn't vying for a top spot on the console. But I love how much passion was put into these 8 little retro revamped titles, and the genuine story and reminiscence of Reno from growing up alongside the genesis of console gaming. I think it's easy to look at this one and get frustrated at how slow the progression is or how many times you have to play through the first few stages of Haggleman 2. But there's a truly unique love letter to the experience of retro games here, and it feels like the most NGP of NGP titles imaginable.
I do think you have to consider the pacing thing like this too. It's a handheld console, and so this, you're not trying to beat it in one sitting. We all were, because we're trying to rush through it in a week. But back then, you were taking this with you and doing a challenge here or there and finally unlocking the new one.
The free play in particular makes it a great pick up and go handheld title, return to when you want to, and they're largely shorter than their actual counterparts, which makes it a lot more like that as well,
right.
you know? Yep. So, and then finally, Not Enough Dog, who also submitted this game. I grew up in the early 90s gaming with 2 older brothers. These are memories I wouldn't trade for the world, but they are also memories from an era entirely lost to the all-devouring maw of the information revolution. Secret cheats, simple games, and even just the simple joy of going over to your friend's house to sit on the floor and play these games are all extremely rare now. And nothing really captures that time and the vibes of it, except for Retro Game Challenge. It's definitely a flawed game. The need to go chronologically through the 80s means you get a lot of games that are kind of weak, and the commitment to accuracy can make it awkward and unpleasant. But the commitment to the qualia of talking with your friends, reading magazines and instruction manuals, and so on means it's not really a game just about playing the games. It's a game about the experience of early gaming in general. But that's what makes it so unique and so valuable and such a magical portal back to childhood.
Congrats on getting your game picked. That's hype.
And that's congrats on using qualia, if that's what you meant to say, because I looked it up and it is a word. So
well, qualia to you, sir.
Qualia, madame. Thank you for sending in your thoughts on the retro game of the week. You can do that each and every week by submitting your commentary to ngppodcast@gmail.com or by dropping your thoughts in our commentary channel in our Discord. We'd love to include your thoughts as a part of our show next week. For now, we're setting aside Retro Game Challenge.
I'd play Random Game Challenge as well.
That's a WarioWare.
Yeah.
And we are randomly selecting from our great retro master list. So far, this summer has been nothing but bangers / weird bangers / Kenny doesn't like this game.
Yes.
But let's find out what game we are playing for the next 7 days. Randomizing now. Are we continuing or are we concluding the trend? You tell me. We are playing a game from 1993 on the Sega Genesis.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Published by Sega, developed by Compile.
Compile? I don't know them.
Compile.
Okay.
Yes, Compile. Okay. It was also ported to the Game Gear and the Master System. It is a falling block puzzle game a la Tetris.
Wait a minute. Does it start with
the game is a westernized version of Puyo Puyo.
Yeah.
And it replaces its characters with those from the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. For the next 7 days, we are playing Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine.
Dude. This
What even?
All right, this is actually crazy. The Retro Master List is sentient because I was playing Puyo Puyo 2 Tetris, which is the newest one on Switch. This last week, and it's by Sonic Team because of this first one was the Dr. Robotnik one. So like, wow.
I'll say this next episode, I'm sure, but actually last week. There's a lot here, but y'all know Jared came into town, his band was playing, and him and I went to an arcade, and we played both Tetris and we played Dr. Mario.
Yeah.
My thoughts on Tetris still remain, but I think Dr. Mario might be a good game, which is crazy.
I can't stand
you got it backwards.
I can't stand
we'll
you.
have to see. Tetris still sucks.
And I think you'll like Puyo Puyo. It's, dude, I'm looking forward to it.
We'll see. Find a copy of Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, which is a great title, and play it along with us this next week.
Check out Discord. Our community is thriving, and we want you to be a part of it. We need to hit 2,000 members, and we're very close. So if just 5 of you right now will go and do it, that'd be great. Discord.gg/NewGamePlus.
We also want to say thank you to those of you who support us on Patreon at patreon.com/NGP podcast, including our large list of producer-level supporters: Adam, Alex, Marlene, Antonin, Ben, Big Dude, Brunt, DH Bowser, Ellis, Fishy, Francesca, Gimbin, J. Robert, Jake, Jared, Joey, Jordan, Justin, Clint, Nicknack, Corey, Levi, Maximum, Pedro, Sage and Shauna, Subsonic Demon, Tazelhoff, Thomas, Unbedavable, Siegfried, and Zion. We want to say welcome to our newest producer level supporters.
Whoa.
Hey, Big Hype, and a good time to be joining on. Not Enough Dog and Turtle Speed. And of course, Turtle Speed.
Yeah.
Turtles are slow.
Well,
Okay. Our director level supporters who are not slow about supporting the podcast. Bro Jim, Daniel, Garlisle, and Super Hypered. You guys are hairs.
thanks.
RR. You can follow us on our social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, and YouTube. All of those links are in the show notes. Listen directly on any podcast provider of your choice. Make sure you subscribe so that you are the first to get new NGP episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a kind rating and review. Our video episode was edited by Nolan.
Hey, that's me. We'll see.
Our audio episode was edited and produced by our friend Dan Willett. Join us next week as we play Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. Until then, I'm still a Galaga ripoff.
I'm still loving the shmups this week.
I'm a Reno.
And this has been New Game Plus.